In the 1970s, going to the department store was an absolute event. The whole family dressed up, piled into the station wagon, and dedicated a whole Saturday to a single building. Almost everything we did inside those grand, bustling public palaces has now completely vanished. Today, we are going to explore 30 normal vintage habits every American did at the department store in the 1970s that you can never do again. And our final habit explains why we lost something far bigger than just a place to buy our thing. 1. Circling dreams in the Christmas Wish Book. Every fall, a thick, heavy package would arrive in the mailbox and change the entire atmosphere of the house. It was the Sears Roebuck, or Montgomery Ward Christmas Wish Book, hundreds of pages thick and packed with glossy dreams. For the children of America, this was the single most important document of the year. We would lie flat on our bellies on the living room shag carpet for hours, dog-earing the toy section until the spine practically cracked. We negotiated with our siblings over who got to hold it next, carefully circling our absolute must-haves and writing our names in messy pencil next to the pictures, so there could be no confusion on Christmas morning. The Wish Book was our internet before the internet, a physical portal of pure anticipation that officially signaled the holiday season had begun. 2. Riding with the uniformed elevator operator. In the grander multi-story department stores, riding between floors was part of the theatrical experience. You didn't just push a plastic button, you stepped inside a gleaming wooden brass cab run by a real, live elevator operator. Often wearing a crisp, tailored uniform with pristine white gloves, she would stand at the heavy metal lever, pull the brass gate shut by hand, and call out the floors in a beautifully practiced, melodic cadence. 3rd floor, ladies' wear, lingerie, and fine shoes. To a child, she was a figure of immense glamour and authority, skillfully leveling the heavy car with the floor every single time. It made an ordinary shopping trip feel like a majestic, high-class occasion. 3. Watching cash whoosh through pneumatic tubes. If you shopped in an older department store, you likely remember standing at the register with your head tipped back, completely mesmerized by the ceiling. Cashiers didn't keep cash drawers at their stations. Instead, they wrote out your slip, took your paper bills, and tucked them into a heavy brass or plastic cylinder. With a sharp snap, they popped it into a network of exposed overhead pneumatic pipes. A loud, satisfying whoosh would echo through the store as your money shot across the ceiling, traveling through a maze of brass tracks to a central cashier's office upstairs. Moments later, the canister would come flying back down to your register with your exact change. It was a marvel of vintage engineering that made paying for a pair of socks feel like a trip to the future. 4. Braving the moving stairs. For a child visiting from a smaller suburb or rural town, the department store escalator was nothing short of a mechanical wonder. Standing at the landing, watching those heavy metal teeth emerge from the floor and turn into a rising staircase, was both thrilling and mildly terrifying. You had to time your step absolutely perfectly, grasping the black rubber handrail and riding up through the open air of the store, looking down at the bustling cosmetics displays below. That simple ride was a rite of passage, a tiny step into a grand, modern world of movement and light. 5. Getting sprayed at the cosmetics counter. Stepping through the main glass doors of the department store meant instantly walking into an overwhelming, intoxicating cloud of fragrance. The cosmetics department always occupied the prime real estate at the very front of the store, a glittering maze of mirrors, bright lights, and pristine glass display cases. Standing behind them were impeccably dressed women in white coats who looked like glamorous laboratory scientists. They would politely catch your eye, spritz a cloud of the newest Estee Lauder, Chanel, or Charlie perfume onto a paper card, or spray it directly onto your wrist. For a young girl, being allowed to try a dab of lipstick or get a sample of expensive powder was a magical grown-up experience she would talk about all the way home. 6. Spinning on stools at the Formica lunch counter. You couldn't spend a whole Saturday at the store without fueling up, and that meant a highly anticipated stop at the lunch counter. Whether it was Woolworth's, Kresge's, or McCrory's, the long, gleaming Formica counter with its row of heavy chrome and vinyl swivel stools was always packed. You sat up there with your mother, spinning on your stool until she gently tapped your knee to make you stop. You watched the waitress in her hairnet work the milkshake spindle and the grease-splattering flat-top grill. There was nothing on earth quite like a toasted grilled cheese, a hot bowl of tomato soup, and a thick, hand-dipped vanilla malt served in a heavy glass with the metal mixing tin left right beside it. 7. Having tea in the rooftop restaurant. If you were celebrating a special occasion, your grandmother didn't take you to the lunch counter. She took you upstairs to the store's formal tea room or rooftop restaurant. These were elegant, quiet spaces with heavy white tablecloths, real silverware, and a menu featuring chicken a la king, club sandwiches, and Waldorf salad. Sometimes, models would quietly walk between the tables, showing off the latest seasonal fashions from the dress department. It was a dignified, leisurely world where ladies wore their finest hats, spoke in hushed, polite tones, and treated dining out as an elegant art form. 8. Pondering the glass candy counter. No shopping trip was complete without a visit to the sweet-smelling candy counter. Usually located near the center of the first floor, it featured rows of gleaming glass cases filled to the brim with loose candy sold by the fraction of a pound. A child with a nickel or a dime of allowance money could stand there for 10 minutes, agonizing over the massive decision. You watched the clerk use a small metal scoop to fill a white paper bag with chocolate-covered peanuts, Swedish fish, ribbon candy, or warm, salty cashews kept under a heated yellow lamp. Holding that little white bag of treasures made the rest of the shopping trip absolute heaven. 9. Finding a best friend in the pet department. It sounds unbelievable to modern ears, but many major department stores of the 1970s actually had their own fully stocked pet departments, often tucked away in the basement or back corner. It was a lively, noisy place filled with the sounds of chirping parakeets, bubbling aquarium filters, and barking puppies. Children would rush ahead of their parents to press their faces against the glass cages, watching baby turtles swim or staring at rows of tiny hamsters on their squeaking wheels. Even if your family had no intention of buying a pet, a visit to the department store was basically a free trip to the local zoo. 10. Chasing the Kmart blue light special. Without warning, a high-pitched siren would wail over the store's loudspeaker, and a voice would crackle to life. "Attention Kmart shoppers! We have a blue light special in aisle 9. Suddenly, an employee would wheel out a tall silver pole with a spinning blue police light mounted on top. For the next 15 minutes, whatever was in that aisle was marked down to an unbelievable discount. The announcement triggered an instant, spontaneous stampede of bargain hunters. Strangers would lock eyes, smile, and hurry down the linoleum aisles together in a collective rush of excitement. It was a burst of live, communal theater in the middle of a mundane Saturday afternoon. 11. Testing tools in the Sears Hardware Cathedral. The Sears hardware section was a secular cathedral of American labor and durability. The walls were lined with heavy, solid steel craftsman tools, each of them carrying a legendary lifetime guarantee that the store actually honored. If your father's wrench ever cracked or chipped, he didn't need a receipt or a warranty card. He simply walked into the store, handed it to the clerk, and was immediately handed a brand new replacement, no questions asked. Men spent entire afternoons in that department, running their hands over heavy metal table saws and solid socket sets, teaching their sons the value of buying something built to last a lifetime. 12. Slipping on headphones in the listening booths. The record department of a 1970s department store was the ultimate hangout spot for the neighborhood youth. It was a vibrant, loud space where teenagers spent their hard-earned allowances. The best stores featured semi-private listening booths or heavy headphone stations where you could take a brand new vinyl record, slip on a pair of massive vinyl-padded headphones, and listen to the tracks before deciding to purchase. You spent hours flipping through the bins, the cardboard sleeves making a distinct thwack-thwack sound under your fingers, studying the gatefold art and reading the tiny liner notes. The album you finally walked out with was a prized possession because you had physically tested and chosen it yourself. 13. Trying on scratchy back-to-school wardrobes. Late August meant the dreaded, yet exciting annual back-to-school shopping trip. Your mother would lead you to the youth department to try on a stack of stiff, dark indigo Levi's, or Toughskins jeans and scratchy polyester shirts. Everything was bought at least one size too big so you could grow into it over the winter, resulting in rolled-up cuffs and slightly baggy shoulders. The distinct smell of fresh, unwashed denim, starch, and new leather shoes is a sensory trigger that instantly brings back the nervous butterflies in the stomach feeling of a new school year about to begin. 14. Testing furniture on the showroom floor. Buying a sofa or a mattress wasn't something you did with a quick tap on a glass screen. It was a slow, deeply tactile, physical decision. The furniture department was set up like a massive maze of idealized living rooms and bedrooms. Families would spend an hour sitting on every floral sofa, lying completely flat on mattresses right in the middle of the showroom floor, and leaning all the way back in heavy vinyl lazy-boy recliners, while a knowledgeable salesman in a sport coat explained the hardwood frame construction. You tested the goods thoroughly, knowing that whatever you chose would sit in your living room for the next 30 years. 15. Watching live gadget demonstrators. There was almost always a small, captivated crowd gathered around a folding table in the center aisle of the store. A charismatic, fast-talking pitchman with a clip-on microphone would be performing a live demonstration of the latest household gadget. He would slice through a leather shoe with a stainless steel kitchen knife, turn a whole head of cabbage into coleslaw in 3 seconds flat with a hand-cranked chopper, or show how a new vacuum cleaner could lift a heavy bowling ball off the floor. It was a free, hypnotic little variety show that turned ordinary shoppers into a captivated audience. 16. Stepping onto the metal Brannock device. Buying a new pair of shoes was a highly professional multi-step service. You sat down on a vinyl bench, and a shoe salesman, frequently a gentleman who had worked that exact department for decades, would kneel before you on a small wooden stool. He would slide your foot onto the cold, heavy metal Brannock measuring device, adjusting the silver tabs to find your exact length and width. He would disappear into a back room stacked to the ceiling with cardboard boxes, return with 3 options, slide the shoes onto your feet using a polished metal shoehorn, and press his thumb firmly against your big toe to check the wiggle room. 17. Writing orders at the catalog desk. If the store didn't have your specific size, color, or item in stock, you didn't look for another website. You walked over to the wooden catalog order desk. There, you sat down with a massive phone book-sized catalog, filled out a yellow paper order slip entirely by hand using a golf pencil, and handed it to the clerk with your cash. Then came the real exercise. You waited. For 2 to 6 agonizing, exciting weeks, you anticipated the arrival of your package. When the postcard finally arrived in your mailbox telling you your order was ready for pickup, driving back to the store to retrieve it felt like winning the lottery. 18. Flipping through giant pattern books. In the 1970s, home sewing was a vital, widespread household skill, and the department store fabric section was a paradise of color and texture. Mothers and daughters would sit on vinyl stools at low tables, slowly turning the oversized pages of giant, heavy catalog books from Butterick, McCall's, and Simplicity. Once you selected the perfect dress or shirt design, you walked over to the wooden drawers to retrieve the thin paper pattern tissue, chose your fabric from massive hanging bolts, and picked out matching zippers, thread, and buttons. 19. Using the store-specific charge card. Long before universal Visas or MasterCards dominated every wallet, department stores issued their own private charge cards. Having a Sears, J.C. Penney, or Montgomery Ward card was a major symbol of adulthood and respectability. Families managed these accounts with immense care, buying their school clothes or major appliances on the store card and walking up to the customer service desk to pay the bill off faithfully in cash every single month. It was a direct, personal financial relationship between a family and their local store that lasted for decades. 20. Checking in on layaway. Before credit card debt became a standard part of American life, stores offered a dignified, patient system called layaway. If your family couldn't afford a major purchase or a stack of Christmas presents all at once, you took them to the layaway desk in the back of the store. The clerk would wrap your items in brown paper, label them, and store them on heavy wooden shelves. Every week, your mother would hand over a few crumpled dollar bills at the counter, slowly chipping away at the balance. Picking up that final, paid-in-full package just a few days before Christmas was a moment of profound pride and relief. 21. Saving in the Christmas Club account. Many department stores and local banks partnered to offer Christmas Club savings accounts. Starting in January, families would deposit a tiny amount of money, sometimes just $2 or $3 a week, into a specialized holiday account. You couldn't touch the money all year long, but when November arrived, the store would issue you a check or a book of coupons for the total amount saved, giving working-class families a completely debt-free, pre-saved budget to purchase their holiday gifts with. It was an exercise in collective family discipline and patience. 22. Licking and pasting S and H green stamps. With every single purchase you made at the department store, the grocery store, or the local gas station, the cashier would hand you a long strip of sticky S and H green stamps. Back at home, the whole family would gather around the kitchen table to lick the sweet, stale-tasting glue on the back of the stamps and press them carefully into the pages of little paper saver books. Once you accumulated enough filled booklets, you took them to the local S&H Redemption Center, often located right inside or next to the department store, to trade them for a shiny new toaster, an electric blanket, or a set of colorful Pyrex mixing bowls. 23. Visiting the Grand Center Aisle Santa. The department store Santa Claus was the absolute king of the holiday season. The center of the store would be completely transformed into a breathtaking, snow-covered winter wonderland filled with mechanical elves, towering evergreen trees, and twinkling lights. You stood in a long, buzzing line of excited children, your heart pounding in your chest, until it was finally your turn to climb up onto his velvet throne, feel the scratch of his synthetic white beard against your cheek, and whisper your holiday dreams. 24. Posing at the Sears Portrait Studio every few years, the entire family would get scrubbed clean, dressed in their absolute finest clothes, complete with matching clip-on ties and stiff lace collars, and head to the in-store portrait studio. You made an appointment, stood under the hot, blinding studio lights, and allowed the photographer to arrange you on carpeted posing blocks in front of a textured autumn leaves or mottled blue backdrop. Weeks later, you picked up the heavy paper envelope of glossy prints in a dozen different sizes, which would sit on the mantels of every grandparent in America for the next generation. 25. Walking the cold Christmas window displays. In the downtown department stores, the massive street-facing plate glass windows were treated as a genuine public art form. Every November, the heavy velvet curtains would be pulled back to reveal incredibly elaborate, animated holiday scenes. Mechanical elves sawed wood, miniature ice skaters glided across mirrors, and toy trains chugged through snowy mountain passes. Families would make a dedicated trip downtown in the freezing evening air, lifting their small children up onto their shoulders so they could press their noses against the cold glass and stare in absolute wonder at the magic inside. 26. Picking out the wooden console. The home electronics department in the 1970s was a glowing, buzzing look at the high-tech future. Families would gather in front of a massive wall of color televisions, all tuned to the exact same broadcast channel. Buying a color TV was a monumental, heavily researched household purchase. You didn't just look at the screen size. You looked at the cabinet. These televisions were massive, heavy pieces of wooden furniture, built by Zenith, RCA, or Magnavox, designed to sit proudly in the center of your living room like a credenza. 27. Consulting the career salesperson. When you walked into a department store, you were greeted by salespeople who didn't just fold shirts. They were career professionals who possessed a deep, encyclopedic knowledge of their merchandise. The gentleman in the hardware aisle, wearing a short-sleeve button-down, a wide pattern tie, and a pocket protector, could tell you the exact thread count of a bolt. The woman in the cosmetics aisle could diagnose your skin type in 5 seconds. They took immense pride in their work, helped you make a smart, informed decision, and stood behind the products they sold. 28. Testing TV tubes on the hardware machine. If your family television set suddenly lost its picture and turned into a snowy screen of static, your father didn't throw it in the trash. He unplugged the heavy wooden console, took off the back panel, and carefully pulled out the hot, fragile glass vacuum tubes. He placed them in a shoebox and drove them down to the department store hardware aisle. There stood a massive, glowing diagnostic machine, usually a U-Test-M or Sylvania tester. You would plug your tubes into the specialized sockets one by one, watching the analog needle swing toward good or bad. You bought a replacement tube for a couple of dollars right off the shelf, took it home, plugged it in, and fixed the family TV yourself. 29. Expecting quality that lasted for generations. There was a time when the appliances, tools, and furniture you bought at the department store were built with the explicit expectation of lifelong durability. You bought a Kenmore washing machine or a Craftsman lawnmower knowing that with a little basic maintenance, it would easily run for 30, 40, or 50 years. Things were made of heavy steel, solid wood, and repairable copper wiring. We had a deeply respectful, long-term relationship with our possessions, entirely free from the modern cycle of cheap, disposable plastic goods designed to break and be thrown into a landfill. 30. The whole family Saturday outing. Going to the department store wasn't a quick, convenient errand to cross off your to-do list. It was a cherished, full-day family excursion. You spent hours wandering across the different floors, checking in on the pet department, sitting for a portrait, having a long, leisurely lunch at the counter, and bumping into your neighbors in the aisles. It was a shared, physical experience with the people you love most, woven into the very fabric of our weekends. The deeper loss. When we look back at all 30 of these vanished department store habits, we realize a profound, quiet truth. The death of Sears, Woolworths, and Montgomery Ward wasn't just about losing a place to buy our clothes or appliances. The department store of the 1970s was a public palace that belonged to everyone. It was one of the last truly democratic spaces in American life. A grand, warm, glittering place where a working-class family could spend a Saturday afternoon feeling prosperous, respected, and cared for. We chose the warehouse and the website, one convenient online purchase at a time. Each choice was reasonable, but the sum of them was the loss of one of the warmest shared experiences our country ever offered. We traded the lunch counter with our mothers for a meal eaten alone in our cars. We traded the wish book we treasured for an infinite digital scroll we forget the moment we close it. We traded patience, quality, and community for instant gratification and disposable goods. There are millions of us alive today who remember those magical Saturdays. We are the last generation to have walked through those grand glass doors, and if we don't keep telling their stories, no one will ever believe that shopping was once something truly wonderful.